Thanks for joining me. Have you ever wondered about all of the deductions that come out of your paycheck? Today, we're going to talk about that. My name is Deb Howard, your abundant life coach. I help amazingly fantastic faith based believers and entrepreneurs overcome limiting beliefs about money so that they can, of course, live their most abundant life. Uh, I am here during Financial Literacy Month, the month of April. And every Friday, we are talking about a different topic related to financial literacy. And we've already been discussing a few topics. This is the third week. So we've talked about interest. Last week, we talked about credit card payments and, credit card interest and terms. We've talked about the different professions in the financial space as far as financial coaching. We define that financial counselors, the difference between counselors and investment advisors, etc. So this week, I thought it would be good for us to talk about paycheck deductions. I know it may seem basic to some of you, but I get questions about this all the time in my profession as a human resources leader. Um, Yes, you'd be surprised if you are already knowledgeable about this, how many people are not as knowledgeable about this, especially our young people. So I would definitely advise you to pay attention, especially if you have teens, especially if you have those who are just starting the workforce, just going into the workforce. I know we're approaching the summer months, and many times our students will um, get a job for the summer. And sometimes they're not aware of, what's going on with my paycheck. I thought I was making, 15 bucks an hour and I work 10 hours and yet I don't have $150 here. When that paycheck comes, we start seeing all the deductions. So that's what we're going to talk about. What's coming out of my paycheck? All right. So the first thing I want to talk about is the W-4 form. Whenever you get a job, at least here in the United States, most likely you will be asked to complete a W-4 form. Now I'm going to put a quick picture of it up here on the screen. This is a form. Now, many companies now have transitioned to an electronic format of this. So it may not look like this. But what I really wanted to just show you is that this is your withholding certificate. So basically, when you complete this, you are instructing the company uh, about how much you want taken out of your paycheck based on how you're going to file your taxes. So the W-4 is an employee's withholding allowance certificate, right? That's what it is. That's what it's called. It's completed by the employee to help the company really determine how much taxes to take out of your paycheck. So you'll see that it directs you to determine how you're going to file, right? These are filing statuses: single or married, filing separately, married, filing jointly, head of household, right? So, depending on how you're going to complete your taxes, you complete this. And this basically lets the government, or lets your employer know, I should say, how much to withhold from your paycheck. Now, this is not optional for most employers. So unless you are, you know, uh, paying someone via a 1099 as a contractor, most companies that have employees are required to withhold taxes, right? To withhold these taxes on your behalf. So you fill out that. That's really first step, right? That's the first thing that you're going to do. Now, when you get your paycheck, and I have an example of a paycheck just so we can have, a discussion about it, right? So when you get your paycheck, there's a couple of things that you might see. You might see federal income, federal tax, right? You might see that on there. You probably will. That's the amount withheld from a paycheck for your federal taxes. It's based, right, on how you filled out your W-4. Now, I didn't go into all the different ways you can complete a W-4 because I, that's a whole nother thing. But there is a worksheet. There are tools, even on the IRS site, irs.gov, to help you fill out that W-4. So based on how you complete your W-4 determines how much tax will be withheld from your paycheck, right? So you'll see federal tax. You might also see something called FICA, right? Now, here on this example, we have it spelled out. Sometimes it's not spelled out as clearly, depending on your employer, but we have two taxes for FICA. And what is FICA? Because believe me, I've answered that question 100 times in my life. It's the Federal Insurance Contributions Act, right? That's what FICA stands for. Federal Insurance Contributions Act. And from this example, you can kind of tell that part of that money is for Social Security, to pay for Social Security, and part of that money goes to Medicare. All right. Now, approximately 6.2% of your earnings goes towards Social Security. And then about 1.45, 1.5% goes to Medicare, right? Now, the FICA Social Security tax, if you are a high wage earner, there is a cap to that. So, depending on your salary amount, how much you make a year, and it's over six figures. At some point in the year, you might start seeing a zero there because there is a cap on how much Social Security tax is required. There is no cap on the Medicare. All right. So FICA, believe me, I've forgotten that so much. So everyone that's listening, FICA in America, it's the Federal Insurance Contributions Act. I'm sorry. And that's basically for Social Security and for Medicare. Helps pay for those two subsidies here in America. Again, these are statutory withholdings. So your employer really doesn't have a choice, right? They really do need to withhold those taxes. And then if you live in a state with a state tax, then you also might see a state income tax. Now, here where I live, there is no state income tax, but I know many of you who may be listening do live in a state that withholds state income tax. All right. And so that is the basics, right, of what comes out of my paycheck. Now, there are other things, take that down. There are other things that come out of our paychecks, right? And for those who are just entering the workforce, let me give you a few other things that might come out, some other deductions. Let's add that. All right, so let me do it this way. All right, so you might see life insurance. Some companies have an option for you to have life insurance. Now, some companies will pay for it, so you might see a line on your paycheck if the company pays for insurance a certain amount on your behalf. You might see a line there showing, right, that amount. Um, the amounts are listed there, are after tax. All right. And then medical insurance, right? If you selected medical insurance or dental or vision, right, that might also be on your paycheck. Now, another question that I get quite a bit in relation to um, medical insurance and dental insurance, those insurances are HSAs and flexible spending accounts. HSAs are health savings accounts, flexible spending accounts, FSA, right? These two type of accounts are usually associated with the medical insurance that you're being offered, right? So if you select medical insurance, you might, and if it's a high deductible plan, usually HSAs are associated with the high deductible plans. You might have that option. A health savings account, especially if you have a chronic condition, I think is a very good thing to have. Um, I've used both of these type of plans, flexible spending and health savings account. A health savings account allows you to put money, to save money, right, on a pre-tax basis for medical expenses, health expenses, right? Because you can usually use those funds for just about anything associated with health, right? For prescriptions, for your doctor's appointments. For high deductible plans, usually what you want to do is save for that deductible, right? If you have a high deductible, that's why the health savings accounts are usually associated with medical plans that have a high deductible. Sometimes the employer is contributing money to that account. So it's really good. And the other thing about most health savings accounts is that they're portable, meaning if you change jobs, you can take it with you. So that's a great benefit. The flexible spending accounts, I think many of you are probably familiar with flexible spending. It's a savings account too on a pre tax basis, meaning these accounts help reduce your taxable income, right? So if that's a concern, this is a good way to help reduce some of the income, especially if you're making, more money. So the flexible spending account allows you to save money for medical expenses. There's one also I believe you can use for daycare expenses, etc. But basically, you estimate your expenses for the calendar year. Okay. We're in 2024 now. So you would in 2023 during your company's open enrollment season, you would estimate, how much money you want to put into your flexible spending account. Now, it's very flexible spending account. It's important that you estimate well because unlike HSAs, right? HSAs, the money carries over. Flexible spending accounts, the money does not carry over. Right. So you do need to use the money by the end of the year. If you don't use all the money that you've allocated for that account, typically you lose it, right? And it's not that the company keeps it. Uncle Sam has guidelines, right? The federal government has some guidelines in place. So because this money is deducted from your paycheck on a pre-tax basis, right? If you don't use it, right? This is a government regulated program, then you do lose it. So you'd estimate, what your expenses are. So for instance, maybe you're thinking I'm gonna have dental work, I have prescriptions, etc. So maybe we're gonna say $1,200 for easy math. So I'm gonna have $100 deducted out of my paycheck every month, depending on how you're paid, right? $50 biweekly, etc. Great. So when you start the year, the assumption is, right, that there you go. You have $1,000 in your account. Okay. So as you incur these expenses from your flexible spending account, you can either get that money back or sometimes flexible spending accounts now, some of the companies out there use something similar to a debit card. So you would just use your card to pay for it, right? It's a great benefit, like I said, because number one, it saves you a few tax dollars, right? Because the money into going into these accounts um, is usually deducted on a pre-tax basis, and HSAs, um, are tax deductible also. So these are good things. But if you're just starting a job, if you're just entering the workforce, if you kind of wondered about some of these things, then that's what they are. It's a way for you to save for health expenses. And here in America, the government allows us to do that, basically allows us to do it on a pre-tax basis, or these expenses are tax deductible. All right. We also have 401k or 403b. Many of you are familiar with those plans. A 403b is basically, I think, for nonprofits and such, but it's the same thing. So with the 401k, um, the premise of the 401k is that it gives you the ability to save money again on a pre-tax basis, right? So many companies, especially big companies, have that option available. Um, Basically, that money is invested. So usually the funds are managed by, here in America, one of the big companies, Fidelity or Schwab, or, the ones that are out there. They're managing the money. You have usually some control over how the money is invested, right? Different companies have different ways of doing things. So I'm just speaking in general. In general, typically you have some say as to how the money is invested. You usually can decide, they usually have, I know Fidelity and some of the others have online trainings, and they have options that kind of help explain, if you're more of a low risk investor or a high risk investor. Many times the company will match, or have some percentage of match associated with the 401k or 403b. So you want to make sure that you have some understanding of that. Now, there's always a caveat to 401ks. They are good, especially if the employer is matching. If the employer is matching, now this is advice my dad gave me. Oh my gosh, when I started. If the company has a 401k, get into it. What I would say about that is, it is a good thing, but just know that the stock market, has ups and downs, right? And so 401k investing is really for the long term. So it depends on your situation. That's really how I want to leave that. It really depends on your situation with that. So you have 401ks and you have 403bs. These plans are really established for long-term investing, um, almost to take the place of pensions. Now, I know many government workers still have pensions here in America, but private employers, right? It's more rare now that private employers have a pension plan. And so when you think about retirement, um, these are options, right? 401k, or an IRA, individual retirement account, right? That you can set up that are tax deductible to help you save for the long term. Now, many times people use those 401ks for other purposes, which you can. Most of them have, programs for loans. Some of them allow withdrawals. If you withdraw before that certain age, that retirement age, let me tell you, the penalties are stiff, right? You're going to be taxed on that money, and for 401ks, you're going to be taxed on that money, and you're usually going to pay some type of penalty on your income tax, right? Because the government is basically saying that this money was set aside for your retirement. So since you're going to use it before retirement, we're going to take a little extra for the convenience, right? Of you saving this on a pre-tax basis and not having to incur taxes on it. So that's with the 401k. The IRA is an individual retirement account that you can actually probably set up at your bank, but there is one. So the IRA, you can use that also tax deductible. There's a Roth IRA that some companies offer. I know my one of my companies offered a Roth IRA that allows you, same premise as 401k, to invest or to save this money, but with the Roth on an after-tax basis. So you are using money that you've already paid taxes on, investing it in the Roth IRA, and it grows tax-free. So when you take the money out, ah, right. No taxes at retirement. Unlike the 401k, because you have been investing that money on a pre-tax basis, even when you retire, right? You won't get the penalties, but you will pay taxes. You will pay taxes. So the premise of the 401k is that by the time you retire, your income will be lower, right? And so, i.e., your taxes should be lower. That's probably debatable whether your taxes will be low or not, because it seems taxes are always going up. But that is the premise, right? That your income would be lower. So as you withdraw that money from your 401k in retirement, yes, you'd pay taxes on it, but it wouldn't be as much tax, supposedly. Okay. And then with the Roth IRA, same premise. Except you can contribute money on an after tax basis. Okay. And then when you withdraw it at retirement or whatever, it's not taxed, right? Because you've already paid taxes on it. So I think these are great options, and I know that these are options that many companies offer. You know, and so if you're entering the workforce, or if you've been in the workforce, listen, I don't want to be presumptuous, because, like I said, I get questions about this all the time. So I know this is an area um, that people don't always have all the information about. These are optional plans, right? So you need to do your research, even in regards to what your company offers. Do they have a match, with the 401k or even the IRAs? Do they match? And a common match, some companies, good companies, will match dollar for dollar what you contribute up to a certain percentage. Other companies might match 50 cents on the dollar, 25 cents on the dollar, whatever. So if there's a match, it could be worth it for you, right? To deduct a percentage, even if you start off at 2 or 3% of your income. Um, with the 401ks, because the money comes out on a pre-tax basis, many times, if you start low, you'll bring home basically the same take-home pay, right? So you could probably put in 2% and not even notice it if if you really need your take-home money, right? If you're afraid of that. And if there's a match at the company, then that would allow you to take advantage of basically that free money that your employer is giving you. So listen, oh, I know that was a mouthful, and there are other deductions, that can come out of your paycheck depending on your selections. If you're in a union, you might see union dues. So listen, let me tell this story. My first job, my very first job as a kid, I was at a supermarket. It's called Rice Food Market, and they were unionized. I didn't have any idea what a union was. I was It was a long time ago, and don't ask questions, but I was 14. So I was 14 years old, had my first job at Rice Food Market, and I got hired, and the first thing I get on the first day is a meeting with a union rep who convinced me to get in the union. I don't even remember the conversation. I was like, "What? Yeah, you got to get in the union." I mean, he didn't really give me a choice. Let me just say that. Yeah, you got to get in the union, or you're not gonna get no hours. That was pretty much the conversation. So I encourage you, if you live, or especially if you're a young person, right? If your child or niece or nephew or whoever is starting the workforce, and you live in a place, or they're employed at a place, or looking at a place with unions, then go ahead and educate them on unions. Okay, this is outside the scope of today's live, but yes. So union dues, charitable contributions, right? Some companies have funds for employees, to help employees, right? Employee assistance kind of funds, that kind of thing. So you might see, or they might have an option for you to donate to the United Way or to the Red Cross. Again, these are optional. And there may also be a line on your paycheck for shoes or uniforms or tools, depending on your profession. I know service industries that I've worked in, slip resistant shoes have been required, and so many times employees are given an option to go ahead and purchase shoes through their vendor, and it will be deducted out of their paycheck, right? So again, these are usually optional things that you can do. that you can have deducted out of your paycheck. But as we've been talking, you can tell that a lot of stuff can come out of your paycheck, and that's not even everything. But these are the basics, right? So we talked about our W-4. Now, we just finished tax season. So many of you are familiar with the W-2 statements, and a lot of times those two statements get mixed up. But the W-4, remember, is what you're going to complete to allow the employer to estimate how much taxes to take out of your paycheck, right? So you're basically telling them, hey, this is my filing status, right? This is how I'm going to file my taxes. This is who I am, and they have, a chart, or they have a way to estimate how much taxes based on your salary you may owe. Now that could change depending on your situation, and if you didn't know this, you can always go back and update your W-4, right? So if something changes, for instance, maybe you have a baby, which could change the deductions. If you were filing single and you have a baby, then that would take you to head of household, maybe. So you might want to update that so that you can get more take home pay. It's up to you. A lot of people like to wait and um, get their money at the end of the year. Judgment call there, right? Because you're basically lending the government money, but I get it. None of us wanna owe taxes. So the W-2 statement that you get is basically a summary, right, of what the company paid you and how much taxes they took out, right, based on your behalf. So that's usually what you use to file your taxes, right? The W-2 statement. So the W-4 is before, the W-2 is after, if that helps you any. And of course, we talked about FICA, right? Right? That question I get so much in life. FICA. Oh my God. Who is FICA and what do they want with my paycheck? Well, they want to uh, take money out of your paycheck for Social Security and Medicare. Federal Insurance Contributions Act is what FICA stands for. Of course, you know what the federal tax is. So listen, I hope that this was beneficial to you today. Thank you so much for joining me. I want to let you know that there's a summit at the end of the year, October 19th, 2024, Kingdom Wealth Warrior Summit. I hope you'll consider joining me. We probably will be talking about some things that are more in depth regarding money, but if you had some questions, you could definitely bring those questions. Also, I want to encourage you to join my Facebook group. I have a Facebook group uh, here on Facebook, the Kingdom Wealth Warriors community. So join me there, and of course, subscribe to my YouTube page. So listen, you know what I'm going to say. Go have your most abundant day. I'll see you next week.